Hi friends and happy Tuesday. You will notice that there's no live lesson today because I am not able to be in school today because I have an eye doctor appointment. Anyway, so that's why you're going to have this little bit daily video instructions here for you. So make sure you watch it through its entirety because there's going to be two pieces to this video. The first is going to be going through your assignment for the day, and the second is going to be explaining your final project. So I'm going to do my best to keep it short and sweet, but this is also information that you are going to need for the rest of the week. So when you click on Tuesday, our plan is that we are going to scroll down here. We are going to do just a little bit of review of the elements of plot. We're going to complete the plot pyramid, aka these slides, and then we're just going to chat through the final Lemons project. The final project isn't going to be assigned to you in Google Classroom until tomorrow, but I just want to kind of give you a heads up, talk about it so you can start thinking about it. However, when you click on this here, you will notice that it'll open up and you have your Lemons elements of plot. So essentially, the in-person people are filling this out on paper. You are filling out the Google Slides version. It doesn't look very pyramid-y, but it's still there. So again, your directions are over here. You're going to use this to fill out your plot pyramid as we go through it in class, aka in this video. Please see live lesson video, this video, if you need repeats or have questions. So before we kind of get into this, just as a little review, exposition, it kind of prompts you as you go, but the exposition here is going to be made up of the setting, meaning where does it take place? Situation and climate is like background information, what do we need to know going into it? And then the main characters. Then we've got the conflict here. Again, that's going to be one of the first things that you identify. Otherwise, you're going to be like, I don't know what I'm doing. So make sure conflict is one of the first things you identify, and same with the climax. The rest then you'll be able to fill in because rising action is going to be the events that are propelling the story forward leading up to that climax, because the climax is the turning point or the most suspenseful part. Falling action is slowly bringing the story to an end, and then the resolution is going to be how is the conflict solved? How are all the questions answered? How did it end? So you will notice, and I'm going to switch screens here in a second just to go through the teacher version, but you will notice you have slide 3 here is the freebie answers. Now I'm giving you the conflict and I'm giving you the climax because then you're able to identify what the main problem is, aka you'll be able to fill out the rest of these easier. Same with climax. You'll be able to work backwards to figure out what events led up to it, and then forwards what happened right after and how did it end. All of these are going to be very important, but that's why I wanted you to have the freebie answer just so that you're on the path to success. So this is your version, and then you'll notice it just goes through, it has blanks. You're going to type in each of these. I gave you the characters there, but the rest you're just typing in. So I'm going to switch to teacher version so that we're able to go through these. It looks almost the exact same. Present. Okay. I think I want to come over here. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so again, this video is something that you can have open listening to while also being in your other assignment and filling out, typing things as we go. So next, there we go, same plot pyramid. Under here, it just says protagonist versus antagonist. Skip it. We're not going to talk about that right now. Your job is going to be filling this out. Again, that's the teacher version. But when we talk about conflict, what is the main problem of the story when thinking about Lemonade? So the hard part with doing a whole novel plot pyramid is we want to put as much information in as possible. However, the reality is there's a lot of information we're going to leave out because we're just talking about the main conflict and then we're plotting based off of that. So when we think of the main problem of Lemonade, or of thinking about the main problem of Lemons, we want to think about what is the biggest problem. And when we identify that, we're able to say that Lem has to learn how to live life without her mom in a new and unfamiliar place. That's been the problem since the get-go. And it really, that is something that is constantly coming back. The whole book, Lem is trying to decide if she wants to stay or if she should go. So that's the biggest problem. She has to learn how to live life without her mom in a new place and in an unfamiliar place. So on your conflict slide, make sure you have this down. Then we want to jump to the climax. It might seem like we're skipping rising action, but it's just a little bit easier to work backwards and forwards once we've identified that turning point. So when you think about Lemons and you think about the fact that we know the problem is Lem has to start over without her mom, what is the turning point? Think about the time where Lem, it was a heart-stopping moment and it really shifted the whole perspective of the book. So up until what point was Lem like, yeah, I'm going back to San Francisco, I'm going back to San Francisco, and then something happened and now it's like, I don't know, what should I do? if you're thinking about the turning point, your answer should be when Charlie gets in an accident and ends up in the hospital, because that's the point where Lem is the most scared. She's like, this is my fault. I was talking about how I want to go home, but now Charlie's hurt and I'm feeling all these feelings. So that's the turning point. The most suspenseful moment is when Charlie's in an accident and we don't know if he's going to live, if he's going to die, if he's okay. Like, we don't know anything. So based off of knowing the conflict and the climax, now going through and filling out the rest should be fairly simple. So I'm going to skip this. This is for in person. Going back to the exposition, setting the scene. Setting, we know it takes place in Willow Creek, California. Background situation, Lem moves from San Francisco to Willow Creek after her mom passed away. We aren't saying the setting is San Francisco because, yeah, they reference it, but that's not exactly where it takes place. So we're skipping over that. Characters, we've got 4 main ones: Mrs. Dickerson, Charlie, Lemonade, and Tobin. Again, exposition is just setting up that pyramid. So now this is the working backwards piece of it, now that we have the 2 main things identified. Conflict, we have also talked about. Lem has to learn how to live her life without her mom in a new place and in an unfamiliar place. Climax, we also talked about when Charlie gets in the hospital. Now we go back to rising action, event 1. So what events led up to the climax? What events led up to Charlie ending up in the hospital? Now, one thing that I want to make clear is there are a lot of things that happen in this story that lead up to this climax. There's a lot of things that make the conflict worse, because remember, that's what rising action is. What happens to make the conflict worse leading up to that big boom? So it's okay if you don't necessarily have the same answers, but you should be somewhere around the same track. So an event 1 could be Lemonade frequently talks about wanting to go back home to San Francisco. Like every other page, she was talking about how she wanted to go home with her real friends, stay with Miss Cotton, all of that stuff. So that could be your first event. Second event could be when Dolores Jaworski tells Lem that Miss Cotton wants guardianship of her. So remember that she comes and visits Bigfoot Souvenirs and More and is like, you have this option. We need Lemonade's input on if she wants to stay here or go back and live with Miss Cotton. And that kind of starts the idea of like Lem trying to decide what she really wants and which place she values, and thinking about the people that she has in both places now. And then the third one, so AK, when you're doing the third one, what happens right before that climax? So what happened right before Charlie got in the accident? And we would say she feels conflicted and frustrated with all of these feelings and with all of these decisions, and she runs away to Mrs. Dickerson's house. Then we know all of a sudden she's there. They're having this heart-to-heart. All of these details that we know to be true, but we're okay with leaving out because it's not prevalent to our plot pyramid. And then we get to the climax of the big boom and the fact that Charlie's in the hospital. So once we have that most suspenseful moment, what events are starting to wrap up the story and leading us to a resolution? Well, for this one, I would say Lemonade realizes she loves Charlie and she really values her life in Willow Creek. That's like the pivotal moment in the book. It's the first time that when Charlie gets hurt, it's the first time she considers staying, because she's like, I really care for him. She calls him grandfather for the first time. And so that's this falling action is where she's starting to understand and realize how much she loves her life here. Which then brings us to the resolution. How is the conflict, aka the fact that she has to start over in a new place, in an unfamiliar place? How is that resolved? She decides she wants to stay in Willow Creek with Charlie and her new chosen family. So that's kind of how it ends. And the interesting part and what kind of makes it tricky is there's a lot of details that we left out, and that's okay. But you'll notice Bigfoot is never mentioned, and one would argue Bigfoot is a huge part of the novel. However, there's not a huge conflict around Bigfoot other than they want to find him and they can't. But when we think about the conflict as an entirety, when we think about the novel, Lem having to start over in this new place is the biggest problem of all. Hence why we follow that as we're going through this entire plot pyramid here, right there. That's why we're kind of following through with that, and Bigfoot's not even mentioned. So as long as you are somewhere on the right track with this, and maybe your answers aren't the exact same, that's okay, but you're on the right track, that's going to make your final project, aka what I'm going to talk about here in a second, that much easier. The last piece of this puzzle is the theme. What is the moral lesson of the story? I'll bet you would never guess what it is. They haven't mentioned it a million times, but when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. AK, when you run into challenges in life, find the positives and you'll be able to work through it. There's our theme. So I know that's kind of a lot of information. It's a lot of plotting. It's a lot of typing for you. However, that's the nice part about having this on a direct video is you can go back, you can change what you need to as long as you're on the right track, and you can go at your own pace. So really utilize that. This is going to be, or these slides that are going to be on Tuesday, May 18th, you're going to come back to these. You're going to use them tomorrow when you are assigned your final project. Now, this next part of the video is just going to be me explaining a little bit about the final project, and then you are going to notice that this part of the video will also be linked tomorrow, so you'll get more instruction, but I just want you to kind of start thinking about it. So basically what's going to happen is you're going to use the plot pyramid, aka those slides, for lemons that we completed in class in order to create a storyboard comic strip. It's going to tell the story of lemons through the elements of plot. So you're basically telling the same story while also referencing each element. In the rubric below, you will find everything you will need, that you are being assessed on for this project. The assignment will be due on Friday, May 21st, aka this Friday. So you'll notice you have all the elements that are going to go in it. The storyboard is going to be written in story form. So yes, you are using this plot pyramid for it and these slides, but it'll then be written in actual complete sentences. Color should be used, and you guys are going to have a Google Slides version, so making sure that there's not a lot of white space left is going to be important. And then this rubric right here is going to be what you're graded on. So it's going to be 30 points in the test category, which is kind of a lot. And now I am making some adjustments to what your distance learning version of this is going to look like, but just to kind of give you an idea, this is what the in-person is going to get. And it's just going to be loading. It looks kind of like a storyboard and an adapted comic strip version. So yours is going to look similarly, but it'll just be broken up in a little bit of a nicer way. So your sentences will go on the lines and your pictures will go here, which you'll be able to use Google in order to incorporate those pictures. So that's what your final project is going to be. Again, you'll get more information tomorrow. However, today it's really important to make sure that you have this distance learning slide all completed and filled out so that you're able to go into the final project seamlessly and you'll have everything you need. So I know this was a lot, sometimes kind of confusing. That's a nice part of a video. You can go back, rewatch, and then any questions you have, feel free to send me an email and then we can talk about them tomorrow during the live class as well. So with that said, you're amazing. Go out, enjoy the day, and I will see you tomorrow.